Iceland is a beautiful country, and having lived here for over 5 years now, I think it's one of the places that I could never have imagined being able to move and live in this country and be able to explore all of the nature and the environment, the culture, the language even, that I have been lucky enough to do so far. One of the questions that I get a lot asked from this channel is when people can come and visit Iceland again. And I know 2020, everyone is stuck at home. You can't travel. You know, the European border is closed to North America as well as a bunch of other countries. And then even if you are from Europe, coming to Iceland right now, you need to have a negative PCR test in hand as soon as you land. And then they do a double screening as well. So you have to take a COVID test as soon as you land, stay in quarantine for 5 days. They do a second test. And if you're negative on both, then you're kind of free to go. Now, when you're thinking about Iceland, I mean, there's waterfalls. You got the Icelandic horses that people obviously love. I mean, it's these horses, they're so purebred that once they leave the country, apparently they can't come back to Iceland just in case something might happen. So a lot of people come for these horses. Obviously, the Northern Lights is a huge driving factor for coming here. I mean, I saw them not too long ago. I posted a video. It was low quality, but you know, it was just one of those things where you look outside, the Northern Lights are there. They look really spectacular. And I just grabbed my phone and recorded it. I mean, there's the highlands in the summer that you can get to. And then also they have, you know, turf houses or even these churches that are just phenomenal in terms of architecture. And even right downtown Reykjavik, we have Hallgrímskirkja, which is obviously a very famous church. If you're looking up Iceland, Harpa as well is a famous place to go. We have, you know, these glacier and these ice caves. We have the glacial lagoon, which is spectacular to look at all of these sort of icebergs and these chunks of ice that are floating into this lagoon. But then we also have things like the black sand beaches, which although it's very windy most times and the water is quite dangerous, it's an experience to go see it. And then of course in the summertime you have puffins, and you can also walk to the plane wreck. So let's get into the details of when people can come back, start visiting Iceland, when things are going to open back up. 2021, that's going to be the year that travel is going to start happening again, based on all the information we have to this point. So if we look at the latest news from the government of Iceland and the Ministry of Health and the Prime Minister's office, on January 15 of 2021, they said that the current COVID screening situation that they have with the PCR test and the double screening, that's going to be mandatory until the spring. And they say as of May 1st, the Icelandic border controls will depend then on the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control and using their color coding system. Now, this traffic light approach will be applied with different requirements for arriving passengers from countries categorized as either green, orange, or red. So if we take a look at a map right now, we can see here as of March 4th, it's not looking too good. But again, we're pretty early on in vaccinations. I mean, we're only in March. Vaccinations started in late December, January. So given that fact, I think things are going to progress very quickly from this point on. I know that Iceland is hoping to have pretty much everyone vaccinated by June, or the majority of the country. I know that parts of Canada, they're expecting to have a lot of people vaccinated by the summer for sure. And the United States is well underway in speeding up their vaccination as well. So there's a lot of countries administering vaccinations very, very quickly. Now, on the map that we have here, we can see that there's very few green areas of Europe, Iceland being one, and then most of Europe is either red or dark red. There's a couple orange spots and then one tiny little green spot. Now, this is the color coding system that Iceland's going to go towards once May 1st comes and hits. And so what that means is passengers from the low-risk countries will be exempt from quarantine and a second screening if they can provide proof of a negative PCR test prior to departure. So as of May 1st, Iceland's going to say, if you're coming from a country that's in good standing with COVID and things are not out of control, just come with your negative test and you're good to go and explore the country. For arrivals coming from countries that are coded as red, then the current arrangements will remain in place, which will be the coming with the PCR test, 2 tests upon arrival with 5 days of quarantine in between the tests while you wait for the negative result. And then, of course, as I said, passengers from orange and green countries will be allowed into Iceland with a negative COVID test before you departed towards Iceland, and then 1 single test upon arrival to the Icelandic border. And you don't need to have a second test or a quarantine or anything like that. It's going to be just, things are good to go. Anyone who's recovered from COVID and anyone who has had the COVID vaccination, they will remain exempt from testing. So this is all the information that we have right now. It's still a pretty fluid thing. I think a lot of countries are still trying to figure out what's going on and how they're going to sort of make it work, opening up the borders. Because if we're looking at around the world, I mean, everyone relies on tourism. Iceland has been hit especially hard having the borders closed and not having this tourism industry as thriving as it once was. I mean, most hotels here have been closed. There's a couple that have remained open, but for the most part, it's a pretty quiet country. On the plus side, a lot of Icelandic people are pretty happy that they're able to once again explore their country without having this onslaught of tourists around. They all want tourism to come back, don't get me wrong, but it is a different feeling when people from this country are able to go to these waterfalls and to these different areas of the country, especially in the summer, and sort of explore it without hundreds of people around them for the waterfall. So that's the situation as it is right now. If we take a look at Iceland Air's website, we can see, first of all, they have a possible volcanic eruption in Iceland warning right at the top. And we've talked a lot about that on this channel. We can come back to that later on. But first, I want to scroll down here into this blog, which is titled Iceland is Open FAQ. So it's a frequently asked questions, and they updated it just the end of February. And this just lets you know everything that you need to know regarding coming to Iceland. And as I said, right now, if you are coming to Iceland from a European country, remember it's closed to a lot of other countries outside of Europe. But if you are coming from within Europe, then you have to come with a negative PCR test that has been taken within 72 hours of departure. And there are some exemptions, of course, especially regarding children. And then if we scroll down here, we can see that there are no entry restrictions for visitors holding passports from any of the EU or EFTA countries. But then from the UK, it's basically closed. From the US and Canada, it's closed. And you can click on a bunch of these different questions here that they've outlined the answers for anything that pops up. And I'll post a link to this actual site below so that everyone can take a look. But let's just go through a couple quick ones. And the important one here is who can visit Iceland. Now, again, this is right now. And as I said, for the US and Canada, the borders are closed to the US and Canada. And so anyone with those passports cannot come into Iceland. Now, there are some exemptions, and you can take a look at the link that lets you know if you can be exempted from that. You can enter the country. And then they do have a couple other countries that are allowed to come in. Australia, New Zealand, Rwanda, Singapore, South Korea, Thailand, things like that. And this list does update quite a bit, so you're going to want to always check back to make sure. But I think at this point, unless you are from the EU and you have a really good reason to be coming to Iceland, I think best to hold off and wait until May 1st at least and plan your vacations from there, hoping that by June everything's back open, and including the US Canada border as well as many other ones, so that people can start coming back to the country. Now, one other thing that I do want to let you know of is when you can fly to Iceland. Now, again, Iceland Air, they can't give you an exact date. They're just sort of letting you know the information as it is right now. One thing that you can do, though, is you can see that there is a schedule for upcoming flights. And so if we click on that schedule, you can see all of the places that Iceland Air is currently flying to. And they do have an active return flight or direct flights to New York, as well as Boston, and as well as London as well in the UK. And the reason for this is it was agreed that there should be flights available to the United States, because people who have a valid reason for coming and going from Iceland or to the United States, they need a way to get back and forth. And so there are flights there. These are the flights that they have published as of right now. And again, that can change later on. Now, before we end this video, let's take a quick look at the Iceland Air's possible eruption in Iceland. This is the travel alert that they issued on March 4th. So that was 2 days ago. Recently, the government's saying there's a lower and lower likelihood that there is going to be an eruption. But much like a lot of people have commented, it's as much science goes into all of these measurements and trying to figure out what's going on. It's not an exact science. So at any moment, things can just erupt and the lava can come to the surface, or the magma can come to the surface. Now, the good news is the latest data on where this lava flow would actually go if there was an eruption, it would be very localized and it wouldn't be causing a lot of harm, I guess, one way to say it, or sort of loss of infrastructure. So they wouldn't be closing any roads, but it's something to keep note of. So you can see here, as I said in other videos, they might need to change their flight schedule. There are other airports in Iceland. If you are coming to Iceland, there are other airports that are available in Akureyri that offer or can take international flights coming in. So if there is, for whatever reason, a need to reroute to the north of Iceland, then that is a possibility. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a lot of information right now on who can come into Iceland. It's a very fluid situation. As I said, May 1st is going to be the big time where I think a lot of borders are going to start opening up and people are going to start traveling again. But in reality, a lot is going to also ride on how well these vaccinations are going. And especially for all of you in North America, I read that you're going to be getting even faster vaccinations, ahead of schedule. I know Canada saw that the vaccination schedule is faster than they thought it was going to be as well, which is great news. And if that sticks and that happens all around the world, then I think travel is going to open up even sooner than we realize. So until next time, I hope you enjoyed this. It's a lot of information, but hopefully it clears up a lot of stuff.